Owens knew the universe had it out for her the moment her sun hat took flight like a runaway kite across the deck of the Solara Beach Club. "Hey!" she shouted, chasing it barefoot across the warm planks as the wind laughed in her face. The floppy straw hat bounced once, then again straight into the poolside lounge area, and right into the hands of a man in white linen pants who caught it mid-air like it was nothing. As he turned, the sun hit his face and Kaya nearly tripped over her own feet. He was stupidly attractive. Sharp jaw, tousled brown hair that looked like it had been styled by the breeze, and eyes cool, piercing blue that locked with hers as he held out the hat. "Looking for this?" he asked, grinning. Kaya blinked. "Yeah, thanks." "The wind's got good aim today." He stepped closer, his gaze not leaving hers. "Or maybe I was just in the right place." She swallowed, her fingers brushing his as she took the hat. His skin was warm, and as ridiculous as it sounded, something about his presence made the air feel charged. "I'm Kaya," she said before her brain could remind her she didn't talk to strangers, especially not ones who looked like they belonged in a GQ spread. "Tristan O'Connell." His voice was low, smooth. "Pleasure," she nodded, trying not to stare too long. "Well, thanks again. I shoulda get back to my friend before she thinks I got kidnapped." But Tristan didn't move. "Hold on. Are you always this fast at running away from men who rescue your hat?" Kaya laughed. "Only the ones who look like they do it a lot." That earned a real smile from him. "I'm actually more of a suit and tie guy during the week. This is my first beach rescue." She raised an eyebrow. "You a lawyer or something?" "Something like that," he said. "I run a company. Tech stuff." "Pretty boring." Kaya had no idea that tech stuff meant he owned the entire O'Connell Group, one of the biggest private tech firms in the country. But at that moment, all she saw was a guy who saved her hat and wasn't in a rush to stop talking to her. "Well, thanks for the heroic catch, mister." "Tech guy," she said, backing away, half smiling. "Enjoy the beach." "Wait." He stepped forward. "Can I buy you a drink, to celebrate your hat's survival?" She hesitated. Her instinct told her to say no, but something about him, his confidence, his calmness, made her want to say yes. "One drink," she said. "If they let me back in the bar barefoot." He glanced at her feet. "Come on. I know a place nearby, no shoes required." The place nearby turned out to be a private rooftop bar overlooking the ocean, one floor above the club. Kaya's jaw dropped when the hostess greeted Tristan by name and led them to a velvet-roped section with panoramic views and no one else around. "You come here often?" she asked, settling into a plush chair. "Every now and then," he said. "Helps to have connections." Kaya gave him a look. "You mean money?" he chuckled. "That too." She narrowed her eyes. "So, you're one of those guys." "What kind of guy is that?" "The kind who invites girls up to private rooftops and drops hints about how rich he is." "I didn't mention money." "You didn't have to." Tristan leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Look, Kaya, I'm not trying to impress you. I just wanted to keep talking to you." "Is that a crime?" She tilted her head. "What if I said I don't do this kind of thing?" "Then I'd believe you," he said, looking straight at her. "And I'd still be glad your hat flew into my arms." Kaya sat back, silent for a second. She hated how much she liked his answer. They ended up talking for hours. He asked about her art. She was a freelance illustrator trying to build a career from scratch, and listened like he actually cared. She learned that he grew up in Boston, started coding at 14, dropped out of college and built his company from a tiny apartment. "You're like a real-life movie character," she said, sipping her second cocktail. "No cape," he said. "Just a guy who got lucky and worked too much." "Still," she said. "Pretty impressive." He looked at her for a beat. "You're the impressive one," she laughed. "Why would you say that? You're real. You talk like you mean what you say." "I don't meet a lot of people like that." Kaya felt heat rise to her cheeks. She looked away, pretending to admire the view, but she couldn't stop thinking about the way he looked at her. Like she wasn't just a random girl from out of town, like she was already something more. By the time they left the rooftop, the sun was melting into the ocean. He walked her down to the sand. "I'll walk you to your car," Tristan said. "I walked here," she said. I'm staying at a friend's place down the road. Then I'll walk you there, Kaya bit her lip. You don't have to. I want to, he said simply, so they walked, slowly. The breeze tugged at her hair and he reached out, tucking a strand behind her ear like it was the most natural thing in the world. When they reached the gate, she turned to him. This was unexpected. In a good way, he asked. In a confusing way, he stepped closer. I'd like to see you again, Kaya, she hesitated. I don't know if I belong in your world. Tristan's voice dropped. You already do. She didn't kiss him, not yet. But when she went inside, her heart was racing. And she knew deep down this wasn't the last time she'd see the man who caught her hat. 2 days later, Kaya was still trying to convince herself it had just been a fluke, a strange, sun-drenched detour from reality. But the business card tucked inside her sketchbook, with his name embossed in silver, said otherwise. She hadn't noticed him slipping it there until she opened the book that morning. She shouldn't keep thinking about him. She had rent due, 3 commissions behind schedule, and a client who wanted 17 revisions on a children's book cover. Her reality didn't have room for rooftop bars and men who looked like they'd walked out of cologne ads. Still, when her best friend Maren dragged her to an art supply pop-up downtown that afternoon, Kaya wasn't entirely surprised when she spotted him again. He wasn't supposed to be there. Wearing navy slacks and a pale button-down rolled at the sleeves, Tristan stood by a booth featuring digital canvases, talking with someone in a suit. His eyes scanned the crowd lazily until they landed on her. His expression shifted, unreadable, and then he started walking toward her. Maren leaned in. That's the guy, isn't it? The one from the beach? Kaya didn't answer. She was too focused on the fact that Tristan was now standing 3 feet away. You always follow me to places like this, she said, crossing her arms. I could say the same, he replied. But I was invited. Of course you were. I didn't expect to see you here, he added, voice lower now, but I'm glad I did. Maren cleared her throat behind Kaya. I'm gonna go pretend I'm interested in sustainable brush fibers. Kaya watched her disappear into the crowd, then turned back to Tristan. So, art expos, that a new hobby. My company sponsors the foundation running this event. His gaze flicked to the exhibit behind her. And I wanted to see some real work, not the kind you find in sterile boardrooms. Kaya blinked. You're serious. I told you I wanted to see you again. You could have called. I didn't want to pressure you, he said, but I did hope I might run into you. She didn't know what to say to that. So instead, she nodded toward the booth where he'd been talking. You doing business here? I was until I saw you. Now I'm prioritizing. She narrowed her eyes. You know that sounds insane, right? Only if you think I'm lying. Kaya didn't, and that was the problem. He gestured toward a quieter corner of the space, past a display of hand-painted murals. Walk with me. Against her better judgment, she did. The noise of the crowd faded as they stepped into the cool shade of the gallery's annex, where pieces were spaced out on ivory walls, soft lighting casting long shadows. Tristan stopped in front of a large piece, an abstract in deep reds and fractured golds. What do you see when you look at this? She tilted her head. A mess, he glanced at her. Really? An honest mess, she clarified. Like someone was trying to untangle something but gave up halfway through. His mouth curved slightly. You always say things like that, only when I don't have to impress anyone. I hope you never try to impress me. She turned to him then, arms crossed. Why are you doing this? What does this mean? Showing up, saying vague things that sound like poetry. Looking at me like I'm supposed to believe you're not used to women falling for that. His expression shifted. Is that what you think? I think you're the kind of man who doesn't hear no very often. Tristan stepped closer, his voice quiet. I don't chase anyone, I don't have time to. But I haven't stopped thinking about you since the beach, and I don't care if you think that's dramatic. It's true. Kaya didn't move. She didn't trust herself to. I don't want to complicate your life, he said. I just want to know more about it. She looked away, heart pounding. You don't even know what that means. Then tell me. Before she could answer, a voice called from down the corridor his name, said with clipped urgency. A woman in a black blazer approached, looking irritated. "Tristan, the foundation director's been waiting for 15 minutes," he held up a hand. "I'll be there." She hesitated, then disappeared back the way she came. Kaya exhaled. "You have a lot of people chasing you." He turned back to her. "Let me take you to dinner." "I can't." "Why?" "Because I don't date men with assistants who look like they're one missed meeting away from a breakdown," he laughed quietly. "She's not my assistant. She's on the foundation board, still not helping your case." "Then let me try harder," she studied him. "You really don't give up. Not when something feels right." Kaya hesitated, then did something that surprised even herself. She reached into her tote and pulled out a small card she used for freelance gigs. "If you're serious, book something." Tristan took the card without looking at it. "You'll hear from me." She turned before he could say anything else, walking back into the crowd, heart hammering. She didn't know what scared her more, that he meant what he said, or that she wanted him to. The invitation arrived in the form of a hand-delivered envelope. Kaya had just returned from the printer, arms full of rolled-up poster proofs for an upcoming indie author's book launch, when she nearly tripped over the man standing at her apartment building's front stoop. He wore a black tie, earpiece, and an expression more suited for guarding heads of state. "For Miss Owens," he said, holding out a midnight blue envelope with her name written in silver calligraphy. She stared. "You serious?" The man gave a single nod before stepping aside, disappearing down the street without another word. Inside the apartment, Kaya sat on the edge of her tiny sofa and opened it. Inside was a single card. Heavy cardstock, thick as cardboard, engraved with the name of a restaurant she'd only ever seen in magazines. The kind of place with 4-month waiting lists and entrees priced like rent payments. And at the bottom, written in ink that matched the envelope, "Dinner, Saturday, 7. Kaya dropped her forehead into her hands. Marin, curled up on the other end of the couch, peeked over her tablet. "So you're going, right?" "I don't know what he wants from me." "Dinner. In a place that costs more than your car. What do you think he wants?" Kaya crossed her arms. "What if it's some kind of game? What if guys like him do this all the time?" Marin set the tablet down. "Then go and find out. Worst case, you get a free meal and a story." "I don't want to be a story." Marin didn't answer. She didn't need to. Kaya already knew she was going. That Saturday, she stood in front of her mirror wearing the only dress she owned that didn't have paint on it. Black, simple, sleeveless. She had no designer heels, no clutch purse, no diamond earrings, but her eyeliner was steady, her curls were pinned back, and she looked herself in the eye. "Don't fall for him," she whispered. The car waiting outside was sleek and silver, like it belonged in a presidential convoy. The driver opened the door without a word. Not a ride share, not a rental. It was his. When she stepped into the restaurant, the maitre d' greeted her by name and led her through a corridor of glass and candlelight to a secluded table on a balcony laced with hanging ivy and flickering lanterns. And there he was. Tristan stood as she approached, his charcoal gray jacket crisp against the low golden light. He didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at her like he'd forgotten what he'd been about to say. "You came," he finally said. "You made it hard not to." "I wanted to." She sat, unfolding her napkin. "You don't usually have to convince women to have dinner with you, do you?" "I don't usually ask." He poured her water from a crystal decanter before settling in. "I thought about calling after the gallery. But I didn't want to make it easy." Kaya raised an eyebrow. "So you sent a card with a driver and a bodyguard?" "I wasn't sure if I'd get another chance." She glanced around. "You always eat in places like this?" "Only when I want the night to matter." The waiter arrived, and before she could open the menu, Tristan leaned in. "I already ordered. Hope you like surprises." She folded the menu with a sigh. "So you're a control freak." "Only when I care about the outcome." The meal came in courses, delicate, artful dishes she couldn't pronounce, each more absurdly perfect than the last. But what caught her off guard wasn't the food, it was him. He wasn't charming in the way that made her question his sincerity. He was focused, curious. He asked about her influences, Her first sketchbook, whether she preferred ink or charcoal, he didn't look at her phone once. "Your parents support your art?" he asked after the second course. She hesitated. "My mom passed away when I was 16. My dad doesn't really get it. He thinks I should have gone into accounting." "That's why you work so hard." She didn't ask how he knew, she just nodded. "And you?" she asked. "Your parents proud of the empire?" His gaze shifted. "My mother died when I was a kid. My father was proud of money, not people." Kaya lowered her glass. "I'm sorry." Tristan shook his head. "I'm not. He's the reason I built everything from scratch. I wanted to prove I could exist without him." "You did more than that." He met her eyes. "Not without cost." She leaned back, studying him. He wasn't arrogant, just polished, but there were cracks under the surface, and something about that made her lean in rather than pull away. "You ever think about walking away from it?" she asked. "From what? The empire? The expectations? The constant pressure to be everything for everyone?" He was quiet for a beat. "I do, but then I remember what it took to get here, and I'm not ready to let it go." Kaya traced the edge of her plate. "Must be hard, trusting people." "It is." He looked at her. "But I'm trying." They didn't talk about business after that. They talked about music, old films, the way the city looked from rooftops at night, and when dessert came a tiny, ridiculous sphere of chocolate and gold leaf, he broke it in half and handed her the larger piece. The driver waited again outside, silent as before. But this time, when he opened the door, Kaya didn't climb in. She turned to Tristan. "Thank you," she said. "For the evening, for not being what I thought you'd be." He stepped closer. "Come with me tomorrow." "Where? You'll see." She shook her head. "I don't do mystery dates." "Then don't think of it as a date." His voice was low. "Think of it as time, just us." She hesitated. But then she nodded just once, and when she climbed into the car, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. He'd already gotten under her skin. Kaya stood in front of the old iron gate, the morning sun casting long shadows across the gravel drive. She glanced at the address Tristan had written on the linen card he'd handed her after dinner. It matched, but the place didn't. The estate beyond the gate wasn't a mansion, it was a historic vineyard nestled in the hills just outside the city. Rows of vines stretched down the slope, golden light catching on dew-covered leaves. A narrow path led to a stone house with ivy crawling up its sides and a red-tiled roof that looked like it had seen 100 autumns. The gate creaked open before she could buzz the intercom. Tristan stepped out from behind the hedges, sleeves rolled up, dark jeans dusted with soil. "Thought I'd show you something that doesn't come with a valet," she blinked. "You're really committed to this whole surprise me thing." "I figured if I took you to another rooftop, you'd throw your drink in my face." "You're not wrong," he gestured for her to follow. "Come on. I want to show you something." They walked past a row of fig trees, heavy with fruit. The air smelled like earth and sun-warmed leaves, nothing like the polished city they'd both come from. Kaya had to admit she hadn't expected this. "I bought this place last year," Tristan said, leading her toward a small hilltop clearing. "It was abandoned, took a while to restore." "You restored it yourself," he gave a short laugh. "Not with my own 2 hands, but I was here every weekend, helped with the design. Laid out the irrigation myself." She raised an eyebrow. "I can't picture you with a shovel." "That's the point," he said. "I needed something that wasn't about profit margins and IPOs." They reached the top of the hill, where a wooden table had been set beneath a canvas canopy. A basket of fresh bread, cheese, and sliced fruit sat beside a bottle of wine unlabeled. "This is yours?" she asked, picking up the bottle. "First vintage, it's not in stores, might be terrible." She pulled the cork and poured 2 glasses. "Then let's find out." They sat, the city skyline barely visible in the distance. Kaya took a sip and blinked. "That's not terrible. That's relief," he said, smiling. She studied him. "Why show me this?" "Because this place is the only thing I've built that wasn't for anyone else. And I wanted you to be the first person I shared it with." Kaya set her glass down. "You barely know me. I know enough, and I want to know more." She hesitated. "I don't know what this is." "It doesn't have to be anything yet," he said, "but I know how I feel when I'm around you. And I haven't felt that in a long time." She looked over the vineyard, the wind brushing her skin. I've always been the one who leaves first. Before anyone gets close enough to let me down. You think I'd let you down? I think I've learned not to hope for more than what people offer. Tristan leaned forward, his voice low. I'm not offering you a fantasy, I'm offering something real. No games, no expectations. Kaya met his eyes. And if I can't promise anything back, then I'll wait, she swallowed hard. You don't even know if I'm worth waiting for. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a hairpin. She froze. You dropped this the day we met, he said. It was under the lounge chair. I kept it. She stared at the pin in his palm, a tiny silver rose she hadn't even realized was missing. Why? Because I knew you weren't like anyone else, and I didn't want to forget. Kaya stood slowly, walking to the edge of the hilltop. The breeze stirred her curls as she looked down at the vineyard. This place feels like a different world. It is, he said, joining her. It's the one I want to live in, she turned to him. With me, if you'll have me, her breath hitched. I'm not perfect, Tristan, I'm broke half the time. I panic when plans change. I need space when I'm overwhelmed. I'm not someone you can just fold into your life like another possession. I don't want to possess you, he said. I want to choose you, every day. She stepped closer. And if I fall apart, then I'll be there to help you rebuild. A beat passed between them, charged and fragile, then she reached for his hand. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, he said. But I've built companies from nothing. I've fought for things people said were impossible. I'm not afraid of trying. He pulled her gently into his arms, and this time she didn't resist. I think the wind knew what it was doing, she whispered into his chest. He laughed softly. Stealing your hat was the best thing that's ever happened to me. And you're sure this isn't just another pursuit? Tristan cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. I've had everything. But I've never had something that made me feel like I could breathe. She kissed him then, slow, certain, and without fear. Later they walked through the vineyard hand in hand, shoes forgotten, hearts light. Neither of them knew what the future would bring, but for the first time neither of them cared. They had this. And it was real. Kaya adjusted the strap of her bag as she stepped into the sunlit atrium of the O'Connell Foundation building. She glanced up at the glass dome overhead, light filtering through in soft, fractured patterns. This wasn't her world, not exactly, but it didn't feel foreign anymore. The exhibit she'd been invited to hang her work in wasn't public yet. A soft opening for select patrons, Tristan had explained. But what he hadn't mentioned was that her illustrations were the centerpiece hung in the largest room, framed in minimalist gold, and spotlighted as if they belonged in a European museum. She took a slow breath, walking toward a painting she thought she'd never see off her bedroom floor. It was one of her oldest pieces, not perfect, not polished, but honest. Do you like how they've been displayed? Tristan's voice came from behind her. She turned. He wore no tie today, his jacket slung casually over one shoulder, sleeves rolled up just enough to show the watch she'd once teased him about being too expensive to ever wear. He looked completely at ease and entirely out of place among the modest crowd of donors and gallery managers. You didn't tell me you were doing all this, Kaya said. I didn't want you to say no. She narrowed her eyes. You made me the main feature because you are. You didn't even ask. I didn't need to. She folded her arms, half amused, half stunned. That's not how galleries usually work. I'm not a usual patron. She tried to look annoyed, but her mouth twitched. You really don't believe in doing anything halfway, do you? Not when I care. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. This isn't about showing you off. It's about giving your work the space it deserves. You think too small. I think realistically. So did I, until you made me want more. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to the illustration. It was of a girl standing at the edge of an overpass, paper cranes floating around her, one hand outstretched like she was about to fly. I drew this when I was 17, she said. I didn't think anyone would ever see it. Tristan leaned in. I saw it the first time you showed me your portfolio. You skipped right over it. It didn't feel finished. It was. You just didn't recognize what it meant yet. She looked at him then. What did it mean to you? That you were always on the edge of something bigger, you just needed someone to remind you you could jump. Her heart twisted. You're not scared I'll fall. I'm already falling. She blinked, caught off guard by how quiet he'd said it, how real it felt. Before she could reply, a woman approached, an older woman with silver hair and a sharp suit. Mr. O'Connell, they're ready for your remarks. I'll be there in a moment, he said, barely glancing away from Kaya. The woman nodded and left. You're giving a speech? Briefly. Let me guess. You'll quote something poetic and casually mention tech innovation. I was planning to quote you, actually. She stared. Me, you said something to me once about honesty being messy. I think this room could use more of that. Kaya laughed, soft and disbelieving. You're insane. Only about you, he kissed her then. Not rushed, not for show. Just a moment that made everything else, gallery walls, curated guests, polished marble floors, fade away. Later that evening, after the event ended and the building emptied, Tristan led her up a staircase she hadn't noticed before. It opened onto a rooftop garden different from the bar where they'd first talked. This one was quieter, more intimate. String lights hung between trellises and the view overlooked the city skyline, painted in orange and violet. He reached into a side bench and pulled out a black case. What's that? She asked. He opened it to reveal a sketchbook. Her sketchbook. Kaya's jaw dropped. Is that my backup? You left it in my car after our second meeting. I thought I lost it. I kept it. I wanted something of yours near me. She opened it slowly. Inside, the first few pages were untouched, but then carefully slipped between two blank pages was a new sheet. A drawing she hadn't done. It was of her. Sitting on the edge of his vineyard hill, hair tangled by wind, eyes focused on something far beyond the horizon. You drew this, she whispered. I tried. You don't draw. I do now. She turned to him, eyes full. You're not the man I expected. Neither are you the woman I thought I'd fall for, and yet. Here we are, he said. Kaya, I didn't bring you here to impress you. I brought you here because this is where I see my life going. Not just the buildings, not just the gallery, everything. With you, her breath caught. I want you, he said. Your messy days, your brilliance, your doubts. Your art stacked on every surface in our house. I want to wake up next to you and not care what the markets are doing. I want to build something that doesn't need investors, something that lasts because we make it last. She looked down at the sketchbook, then back up at him. I don't need fancy declarations. Then I'll give you the truth, he said. I love you, Kaya Owens. I think I started to the minute you ran across that deck like the world was ending because of a hat. She laughed, pressing a hand to her face. I love you, she said, voice shaking. Even when you're impossible, especially then. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, not glittering or oversized, but simple and carved with the same rose design from her old hairpin. Her eyes widened. You didn't. I didn't plan to, he said. But life with you doesn't follow plans, and I don't want to wait anymore. He didn't drop to one knee. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. Yes, she said, stepping forward. Yes to all of it. Even the terrifying parts. He kissed her again, the city lights glowing behind them, the air warm with something that felt like forever. Months later, the vineyard bloomed early. A new studio was built beside the house, sunlit, open beams, shelves lined with Kaya's work. Her name appeared in galleries across the coast. She stopped doubting whether she belonged. And on evenings when the sun dipped low and the vines whispered in the wind, she and Tristan would sit on the porch, barefoot, wine in hand, laughter echoing into the hills. He never tried to change her. She never tried to shrink herself. Together, they built something neither of them had before, a life that felt like breathing. A love that never asked to be perfect, only true.